Story number 1. Shadows over Newark. I've always been intrigued by places where the veil between the living and the dead feels unnaturally thin, where history's darkest moments linger like restless spirits. Newark Liberty International Airport, a bustling hub of activity and transit, is one such place for me. The tragic fate of United Airlines Flight 93 on September 11, 2001, left an indelible mark on the collective memory of the nation. But beyond the official accounts and memorials, there exists a quieter, more eerie narrative whispered among the airport staff, a story of shadows and whispers that hint at the lingering souls of those who never returned. It was a chilly October evening in 2023 when I decided to delve deeper into these tales. As a paranormal investigator with a passion for uncovering the hidden stories behind significant events, Newark Airport offered the perfect setting. Armed with my camera, voice recorder, and a notebook, I aimed to capture the essence of these unexplained phenomena and perhaps give voice to the spirits that seemed unable to move on. I arrived at Newark just as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the sprawling terminal. The airport was alive with the usual hustle, passengers rushing to their gates, announcements echoing through the corridors, and the distant roar of departing flights. Yet, beneath this veneer of normalcy, an undercurrent of unease seemed to permeate the air. My first stop was the gate from which Flight 93 had departed. The area had since been renovated, the remnants of its tragic history carefully memorialized. I set up my equipment, the cool autumn breeze brushing against my face as I began to document the space. The gate area was serene, with a small memorial plaque honoring the lives lost. But as night fell and the crowd thinned, the atmosphere shifted. I decided to explore the quieter sections of the terminal, areas rarely visited by the public. The security checkpoints were dimly lit, the fluorescent lights flickering intermittently, casting erratic shadows on the polished floors. As I walked through the deserted halls, the silence was almost tangible, broken only by the distant hum of night shift operations. It wasn't long before I began to notice subtle anomalies, sudden drops in temperature, unexplained drafts, and the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. My voice recorder picked up soft whispers, indistinct yet unmistakably present, as if conversations were happening just out of sight. Determined to find the source, I ventured deeper into the terminal, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. I reached the vicinity of the old baggage claim area, now repurposed but still bearing the scars of past tragedies. It was here that the stories took on a more sinister tone, with staff recounting sightings of shadowy figures lingering near the conveyor belts and hearing cries that seemed to come from nowhere. As I approached the abandoned baggage carousel, a sudden chill enveloped the area, the air thick with an oppressive energy. My flashlight flickered, casting erratic beams that danced across the walls. The whispers grew louder, more coherent, forming fragmented sentences that sent shivers down my spine. "Help us!" I froze, heart pounding, as a shadowy figure materialized before me. It stood tall, its form shifting and wavering like smoke in the wind. The figure's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and an overwhelming sense of sorrow emanated from its presence. "Why do you linger?" the apparition whispered, its voice a haunting echo that resonated within me. I struggled to maintain my composure, my voice barely above a whisper. "I want to understand. I want to help." The figure seemed to soften, its form becoming less menacing. "We are bound by fear and unfinished business. Our spirits cannot find peace without closure." Determined to aid these restless souls, I began to ask questions, my recorder capturing every word. The apparition recounted memories of Flight 93, the fear, the courage, and the abrupt end that left so many lives hanging in the balance. It spoke of unfinished dreams, unresolved conflicts, and the lingering pain that kept their spirits tethered to the world of the living. As I listened, the air around me seemed to lighten, the oppressive energy giving way to a sense of calm and purpose. The apparition's presence began to fade, its final words lingering in the air like a promise. "Remember us. Share our stories. Only then can we truly move on." With those words, the figure dissolved into the shadows, leaving me alone in the quiet terminal. I felt a profound sense of responsibility, knowing that the spirits of those lost on Flight 93 were relying on me to keep their memories alive and help them find the closure they so desperately sought. Over the following weeks, I returned to Newark Airport multiple times, each visit deepening my understanding of the supernatural phenomena that haunted the terminal. I interviewed longtime staff members who shared their own eerie experiences, stories of suitcases moving on their own, distant laughter echoing through empty halls, and the unmistakable feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. One night, during a particularly intense investigation, I decided to focus on the old security office, a place where many of the most chilling encounters had been reported. The office was a relic from the early days of the airport, filled with outdated monitors and security equipment. As I set up my equipment, the temperature plummeted, and the air grew thick with anticipation. I began my documentation, speaking softly into the recorder, inviting the spirits to share their stories once more. The room was silent at first, the only sound being the distant hum of airport machinery. But gradually, the whispers returned, more urgent and clear than before. "We need help." Suddenly, the monitors flickered to life, displaying grainy images of passengers boarding Flight 93. Their faces were blurred, their actions indistinct, yet a palpable sense of fear and urgency emanated from each frame. The whispers intensified, blending with the sounds captured on the footage. A shadowy figure appeared on one of the screens, its form shifting and distorting as if struggling to break free from the confines of the monitor. The apparition's eyes locked onto mine through the glass, a silent plea for understanding and assistance. I reached out, my hand pressing against the cool surface of the monitor. "What do you need?" The figure raised its hands, and the room was filled with a deafening silence. The air shimmered with dark energy, and the symbols etched into the walls began to glow with an eerie light. The spirits were restless, their presence overwhelming as they sought the closure that would finally allow them to move on. In that moment, I realized the true extent of their plight. It wasn't just about remembering their stories, it was about addressing the unresolved emotions and unfinished business that kept their spirits bound to the airport. I knew that helping them meant more than just documenting their experiences, it required a deeper connection and understanding of their pain. Over the next few months, I collaborated with paranormal experts, historians, and spiritual guides to create a memorial within the airport, a place where the spirits could find peace and their stories could be honored. We organized ceremonies, invited family members of the victims to share their memories, and established a quiet space for reflection and remembrance. The transformation was palpable. The once oppressive energy of the terminal began to lift, replaced by a serene atmosphere that resonated with gratitude and peace. The apparitions that had once haunted the halls of Newark Airport no longer felt hostile or desperate. Instead, they seemed content, their restless spirits finally finding the closure they had long sought. One evening, as I stood in the newly established memorial area, the whispers of the past seemed to harmonize with the present, creating a symphony of remembrance and hope. I felt a gentle breeze, carrying with it the faint scent of flowers and the soft echoes of laughter, memories that had been preserved and honored. In that moment, I understood that the true power of memory lies in its ability to transcend time and space, to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. Newark International Airport was no longer just a gateway for travelers, it had become a sanctuary for lost souls, a place where their stories would be remembered and their spirits could finally find peace. As I left the airport that night, the stars twinkling above and the terminal bathed in the warm glow of the memorial lights, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The shadows that once haunted Newark Airport had been dispelled, their presence transformed into a legacy of remembrance and compassion. And as I drove away, the whispers of the past lingered in my mind, a testament to the enduring connection between those who have passed and those who remain, seeking understanding and closure in the ever-turning wheels of life. Story number 2. Echoes in the Baggage Hall. I've always been fascinated by the stories that linger in the corners of places where millions pass through daily without a second thought. Airports, with their transient nature and constant flux of emotions, are perfect breeding grounds for legends. Miami International Airport, MIA, is no exception. As a baggage handler, I spend long hours in the labyrinthine maze of conveyor belts and storage rooms, where the hum of machinery blends with the whispers of the past. But it wasn't until the unexplained events started occurring that I began to question what truly lay beneath the surface of this bustling hub. It was late October, and the air was thick with the scent of saltwater and humidity that Miami is known for. The baggage area was unusually quiet that night, the usual hustle and bustle of arriving and departing passengers reduced to a few scattered footsteps and the distant roar of aircraft engines. I was stationed near the north end of the baggage claim, a spot where I had noticed odd occurrences over the past few months, luggage moving on its own, strange laughter echoing through empty corridors, and shadows darting just beyond the reach of my flashlight. At first, I chalked it up to overworked minds and the stress of the job. After all, we handle thousands of bags each day, each one containing a piece of someone's life, their memories, their secrets. But the incidents grew more frequent and more unsettling. One night, as I was unloading a particularly heavy suitcase, I heard a soft giggle behind me. I spun around, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, but there was nothing there, only the endless conveyor belts and the faint outline of storage units. Shaking off the unease, I continued my work. That's when I noticed the suitcase moving on its own, rolling slowly towards the conveyor belt without any assistance. My heart raced as I approached, expecting someone to jump out and play a prank. But the area was deserted. I reached out to steady the suitcase, but my hand passed through it as if it were made of smoke. The laughter returned, louder this time, echoing off the metal walls and sending chills down my spine. Determined to find a logical explanation, I decided to investigate further. I began documenting each incident, noting the time, location, and any unusual details. As I delved deeper into the history of MIA, I uncovered a series of tragic events that had taken place in the baggage area over the years, passengers who had lost their lives in accidents, items left behind by the deceased, and whispers of restless spirits tethered to their belongings. One story stood out among the rest. In 1993, Flight 675 bound for New York experienced severe turbulence shortly after takeoff from Miami. The plane crashed into the Atlantic Ocean, claiming the lives of all 142 passengers and crew. Among the victims was a young woman named Emily Hart, who had been traveling to start a new life in the Big Apple. Her suitcase was never recovered, but her spirit, it seemed, was still tethered to the baggage hall, searching for something she had lost. As the days grew shorter and the nights colder, the incidents at MIA intensified. One particularly stormy night, with rain battering the airport and lightning illuminating the dark sky, I was alone in the baggage area. The wind howled through the open doors, and the fluorescent lights flickered erratically. I was unloading a bag when I felt a sudden drop in temperature, my breath visible in the frigid air. A familiar giggle echoed through the hall, followed by the soft sobbing of a woman. My heart pounded as I turned towards the sound, my flashlight beam wavering in my trembling hand. There, standing by the conveyor belt, was the apparition of a young woman, her eyes filled with sorrow and her hands reaching out as if pleading for something. It was Emily Hart. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm outside. "I can't find my way." I froze, unable to speak, as she slowly began to fade, her form dissolving into the shadows. Determined to help her, I followed the apparition's lingering presence, my flashlight guiding me to a forgotten storage room at the far end of the hall. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit space filled with abandoned luggage and forgotten relics of countless travelers. As I stepped inside, the temperature plummeted further, the air thick with the scent of aged leather and faded memories. The sobbing grew louder, resonating through the room like a haunting melody. I approached a stack of old suitcases, each one bearing the scars of countless journeys and untold stories. My flashlight flickered, revealing the name Hart etched into the leather of one particular suitcase. With a deep breath, I opened the bag, expecting to find something tangible that could explain the haunting presence. Instead, I found only a worn-out journal and a small, faded photograph of Emily standing beside the wreckage of Flight 675. As I flipped through the pages, her handwriting revealed the final entries of her diary, entries filled with fear, hope, and the desperate longing to reunite with loved ones left behind. The journal ended abruptly, the last page smudged and torn, leaving me with more questions than answers. I closed the suitcase, feeling a sense of responsibility to honor her memory and help her find peace. Determined to uncover the truth, I delved deeper into the airport's archives, piecing together the fragmented stories of those who had lost their lives at MIA. What I discovered was a network of forgotten tragedies, each one leaving behind a piece of the puzzle that now formed a haunting mosaic of loss and longing. The baggage area, it seemed, was a nexus of restless spirits, each tethered to their belongings, unable to move on from the world they had left behind. The laughter, the shadows, the moving luggage, they were all manifestations of their lingering presence, echoes of lives cut short and dreams unfulfilled. Armed with this knowledge, I decided to conduct a midnight vigil, hoping to communicate directly with the spirits and offer them a path to closure. I set up my equipment in the storage room, the journal and photograph of Emily placed at the center of a makeshift altar. As midnight struck, the storm outside intensified, the wind howling like a chorus of lost souls. The room grew colder, the air thick with anticipation. I began to speak softly, reciting a prayer of peace and understanding, inviting the spirits to share their stories and find solace. The atmosphere shifted, the oppressive weight lifting slightly as if acknowledging my presence and intention. Suddenly, the temperature dropped sharply, and the room was filled with a cacophony of whispers and soft sobbing. The apparition of Emily Hart materialized once more, her eyes meeting mine with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. She began to speak, her voice now clearer and more determined. "I've been waiting for someone to hear my story," she began, her voice echoing through the room. "I lost everything in that crash, my dreams, my family, my chance at a new life. My spirit is bound to this place, unable to move on because of the pain and fear that still linger." Tears welled in my eyes as I listened to her plight. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I want to help you find peace." She nodded, her form shimmering with a faint glow. "You must remember us, honor our memories, and help us let go. Share our stories so that we are never forgotten." As her words hung in the air, the room began to change. The shadows receded, the oppressive energy dissipated, and a sense of calm settled over the space. The whispers and sobbing softened, replaced by a serene silence that spoke of peace achieved. Emily's apparition smiled, a gesture of gratitude and relief. "Thank you," she whispered before fading into the light, her spirit finally finding the closure it had long sought. Exhausted but fulfilled, I knew that my encounter had not only uncovered the truth behind the haunting presence at MIA but had also bridged the gap between the living and the dead. The restless spirits, bound by their memories and belongings, had found peace through acknowledgement and understanding. In the weeks that followed, the strange occurrences at the baggage area ceased. The laughter and shadows became a distant memory, replaced by the routine hum of airport operations. The storage room where I had found Emily's journal became a place of remembrance, honoring the lives lost and the spirits that had found their way home. But every now and then, as I walk through the baggage claim area, I catch a glimpse of a shadow moving just beyond the edge of my vision or hear the faintest echo of a laugh. It's a reminder that the past is never truly gone and that some stories linger, waiting to be told and remembered. Miami International Airport remains a bustling hub of activity, but beneath its surface lies a history of loss and longing that few ever glimpse. As I continue my work, I carry with me the stories of those who have passed through, ensuring that their memories live on and their spirits find the peace they so desperately seek. In the end, the baggage area of MIA became more than just a place of transit. It became a sanctuary for lost souls, a testament to the enduring power of memory and the human spirit's capacity to find peace even in the darkest of places. Story number 3. Whispers in Terminal 3. I've always been drawn to places where history and mystery intertwine, where the echoes of the past linger just beneath the surface of everyday life. San Francisco International Airport, San Francisco Airport, was one such place for me, a sprawling hub of travelers, technology, and untold stories. But it wasn't the bustling terminals or the endless runways that captivated me, it was the abandoned restrooms in Terminal 3, shrouded in whispers and dark legends that spoke of sorrow and loss. As a senior maintenance technician, my job often took me to parts of the airport that most people never saw. From the labyrinthine ventilation systems to the forgotten corners of Terminal 3, I navigated the silent halls with ease. But there was one area that always sent a chill down my spine, the old, unused restrooms near Gate 32. They had been closed off years ago due to plumbing issues, but the stories surrounding them persisted, passed down among staff like ghost stories told around a campfire. The legend of the Weeping Echoes was one I had heard countless times. Late-night shifts were punctuated by reports of eerie cries and soft whispers emanating from the abandoned restrooms. Some claimed to see shadowy figures lurking in the corners, while others spoke of an overwhelming sense of dread that hung in the air. The most haunting tale was that of the immigrants detained at nearby Angel Island during the early 20th century, a place where dreams of a new life were often shattered by despair and isolation. One particularly restless night, curiosity gnawed at me. The stories had always seemed exaggerated, the product of overworked minds and high-stress environments. But the genuine fear in my colleagues' eyes told a different story. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to investigate the abandoned restrooms myself. Equipped with my flashlight, a camera, and a voice recorder, I made my way to Terminal 3 just as the clock struck midnight. The terminal was eerily quiet, the usual hum of activity replaced by an oppressive silence. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered intermittently, casting long, distorted shadows that danced along the tiled floors. As I approached the entrance to the old restrooms, a cold draft swept through the corridor, carrying with it a faint, almost imperceptible scent of antiseptic and something else, something metallic and sorrowful. The door to the restrooms was ajar, the hinges creaking softly as if inviting me in. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The restroom was a time capsule of a bygone era. The tiles were chipped and stained, the mirrors cracked and smeared with grime. The sinks were dry, the faucets frozen in place. I set up my equipment in the center of the room, the beam of my flashlight piercing the darkness. As I began to document the space, the silence was shattered by a soft, muffled cry. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound was unmistakable, a desperate, heart-wrenching sob that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. I glanced around, searching for the source, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. The cry faded into a whisper, a mere breath of sound that sent shivers down my spine. Determined to remain rational, I pressed the record button on my voice recorder. This is Mark Jennings, conducting an investigation into the reported paranormal activities in Terminal 3's abandoned restrooms. Date, April 27, 2024. Time, 12:05 a.m. I continued my exploration, moving from stall to stall, inspecting the remnants of past lives. As I approached the far end of the restroom, the temperature seemed to drop sharply, my breath visible in the frigid air. My flashlight flickered, casting erratic shadows that played tricks on my mind. That's when I saw her, a fleeting glimpse of a woman in a tattered dress, her face obscured by long, dark hair. She moved with an unnatural grace, gliding across the tiled floor before disappearing around a corner. I whipped around, trying to follow her, but the corridor was empty. The oppressive silence returned, broken only by the distant sound of dripping water. My pulse raced as I reviewed the footage on my camera. There she was, clearly visible for just a split second before vanishing. I knew then that the stories were true, something haunted those abandoned restrooms. As I stood there, grappling with the reality of what I had witnessed, a sudden noise echoed through the restroom, a loud slam that reverberated off the walls. The door had swung shut behind me, plunging the room into darkness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers returned, this time louder and more insistent, filling the air with their sorrowful lament. "Leave, now." I backed away, my flashlight flickering erratically, casting monstrous shadows that seemed to reach out with clawed hands. The air grew thick with an unearthly presence, the weight of countless sorrows pressing down on me. I could feel the eyes of the lost immigrants from Angel Island upon me, their pain and despair intertwining with my own fear. Desperate to escape, I remembered the old emergency exit key hidden behind the reception desk, a remnant from when the restrooms were still in use. Summoning every ounce of strength, I lunged toward the door, pulling it open with a force fueled by terror. The corridor beyond was dark and foreboding, the shadows stretching out like tendrils ready to ensnare me. I sprinted down the hallway, the cries and whispers chasing me, echoing through the empty terminal. Bursting back into the main area of Terminal 3, I collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath. My camera and recorder lay on the floor, the evidence of my encounter captured but now seemingly lifeless. I glanced around, half expecting to see the ghostly apparitions pursuing me, but the terminal was silent once more. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, replaced by the cold, sterile air of the airport. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the memory of that night. The footage I had captured became a haunting reminder of the restless spirits that lingered in the shadows of Terminal 3. Determined to bring closure to their lingering anguish, I delved deeper into the history of Angel Island and the immigrants who had passed through its gates. What I discovered was a tapestry of heartbreak and resilience, stories of hope shattered by isolation, dreams crushed by bureaucracy, and lives lost in the pursuit of a better future. The abandoned restrooms of Terminal 3 had become a sanctuary for these lost souls, their cries and whispers a testament to the enduring pain that bound them to this place. Armed with this knowledge, I returned to SFO with a newfound purpose. I collaborated with historians and paranormal experts, piecing together the fragmented stories that had been lost to time. Together, we held memorials and commemorations, honoring the memory of those who had suffered and ensuring that their voices were heard. As the months passed, the restless spirits seemed to find peace, their whispers growing quieter, their cries less desperate. Terminal 3's abandoned restrooms were finally recognized as hallowed ground, a place of remembrance rather than fear. The legends that once haunted the airport became a reminder of the human spirit's resilience in the face of adversity. But every now and then, on quiet nights when the terminal was hushed and the moon cast long shadows across the floors, I swear I can still hear a faint whisper, a lingering echo of sorrow and hope intertwined, a reminder that some stories never truly fade away. Story number 4. Flight into Darkness. I've always been fascinated by the thin veil between reality and the supernatural, especially in places where tragedy has left its indelible mark. Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, is one such place, a sprawling hub of activity, dreams, and, as the whispers go, dark secrets lurking in its shadows. The story of American Airlines Flight 191 is one that haunts the annals of aviation history, but what if there was more to that fateful day than mere mechanical failure? This is my attempt to explore the chilling possibility that something otherworldly played a role in one of America's most tragic air disasters. It was the summer of 1979, a time when LAX was buzzing with the promise of endless destinations and the excitement of travel. I worked as a maintenance technician, responsible for ensuring that every aircraft was in top condition before it took to the skies. Flight 191 was one of the busiest routes, carrying passengers eager to reach Chicago. Little did anyone know, that flight would become synonymous with one of the darkest chapters in aviation history. In the weeks leading up to the crash, I noticed something odd. A series of inexplicable malfunctions began to plague the maintenance schedules. Equipment that had always functioned flawlessly started acting up, tools went missing, electrical systems shorted out without warning, and there was an unshakable feeling of being watched in the hangar. At first, I dismissed these incidents as mere coincidences or the result of human error. But as they persisted, a sense of unease settled over me. One evening, as I was working late on Flight 191's plane, I heard the distinct sound of footsteps echoing through the empty hangar. I glanced up, expecting to see a fellow technician, but the space was eerily silent. My flashlight flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to dance on their own. I shook off the feeling and continued my work, but the sense of being watched never left me. The night before the flight, I decided to take a closer look at the plane's wing assemblies. As I meticulously checked each component, my flashlight illuminated a series of strange symbols etched into the metal, symbols I didn't recognize but felt oddly familiar with. My heart raced as I tried to decipher their meaning, but they remained elusive, mocking my attempts to understand. I shared my findings with my supervisor, hoping for a rational explanation. He dismissed my concerns, attributing the symbols to previous maintenance crews or perhaps vandalism. "We've got a tight schedule," he said firmly. "We can't afford delays over some scribbles." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. That night, as I lay in bed, I dreamt of the plane soaring through a stormy sky, the symbols glowing ominously beneath the moonlight. The passengers' faces blurred into grotesque masks of fear, their screams echoing in the howling winds. I awoke drenched in sweat, the nightmare lingering like a dark cloud over my mind. The morning of the flight arrived with an unsettling calm. The usual bustle of airport activity was tempered by a pervasive tension. Passengers boarded the plane with a mix of excitement and anxiety, unaware of the fate that awaited them. As I performed my final checks, I couldn't help but glance once more at the wing symbols, now clearly visible under the bright hangar lights. As Flight 191 began its pushback, the engines roared to life, and the plane taxied toward the runway. The control tower communicated with the pilots, giving final clearances. Everything seemed in order, yet an inexplicable sense of dread gnawed at me. I watched as the plane accelerated down the runway, its nose lifting gracefully into the sky. But then, the symbols on the wings began to glow with an ethereal light, unnoticed by the bustling crowd below. The plane climbed higher, piercing the clouds, but something was amiss. Instruments began to malfunction, altimeters spiked erratically, compasses spun uncontrollably, and the radio filled with static. The pilots struggled to regain control, their voices tinged with panic as they attempted to communicate with air traffic control. Suddenly, a blinding flash enveloped the plane, and a force beyond comprehension tore through the aircraft structure. The wings seemed to twist and contort, the cymbals now pulsating with a malevolent energy. Passengers screamed in terror as the plane was pulled into an unseen vortex, spiraling out of control. The ground below blurred into a dizzying whirl of colors and lights, the boundaries between reality and nightmare dissolving into nothingness. Back at the hangar, I watched in horror as Flight 191 disappeared into the sky, leaving behind a trail of inexplicable phenomena. The symbols on the wings dimmed, their purpose fulfilled, or perhaps, their influence unleashed. The next day, news broke of the tragic crash, the loss of all passengers and crew sending shockwaves through the community. Official reports cited mechanical failure and pilot error, but those of us who had witnessed the strange occurrences knew there was more to the story. Determined to uncover the truth, I delved deeper into the airport's history, researching old maintenance logs, accident reports, and local legends. What I found was a tapestry of eerie coincidences and unexplained events. Similar symbols had been found on other aircraft before tragic incidents, each occurrence marked by a sense of impending doom and supernatural interference. One night, as I pored over old documents in my cramped office, the power suddenly went out. The room plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the flickering street lamp outside my window. I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate. My heart pounded as I reached for my flashlight, but the batteries were dead. The footsteps stopped at my door, and a chilling whisper filled the air. "Leave now, before it's too late." I froze, unable to move or speak, as the room grew colder, the shadows deepening around me. A figure materialized before me, a spectral presence, its form shifting and ethereal. It stared at me with hollow eyes, an expression of sorrow and anger etched into its translucent features. "You cannot change the past," it intoned, its voice echoing in my mind. "But you can help us find peace." Before I could respond, the figure dissipated, leaving me alone in the silent room. Trembling, I realized that the symbols on Flight 191's wings were more than mere markings. They were conduits for restless spirits, anchors that held the plane and its passengers, trapped between worlds. Fueled by a mix of fear and determination, I decided to confront the source of the darkness. I returned to the hangar, the site of the crash, now a place of haunted memories and lingering sorrow. As I approached the old maintenance shed, the air grew thick with an oppressive energy, the remnants of the tragic event still palpable in the atmosphere. Inside, the walls were covered in the same cryptic symbols that had plagued Flight 191. The room was suffused with a faint, otherworldly glow, the symbols pulsating with dark power. I placed my hand on one of the symbols, feeling a surge of energy course through me. The room began to shimmer, the boundaries between reality and the supernatural blurring as the spirits of the lost passengers materialized around me. "We are bound by your fear," one of them whispered, her voice filled with despair. "Release us, and find peace for all." Understanding dawned on me. I had to confront the darkness head-on, to sever the ties that bound the spirits to this plane and this place. Drawing upon every ounce of courage, I began to chant the incantations I had discovered in my research, the words flowing from my lips with a newfound strength. The symbols on the walls responded, their glow intensifying as the spirits watched in anticipation. The air crackled with energy, the oppressive weight lifting as the spirits felt the bonds weakening. One by one, they began to fade, their presence dissolving into the ether as peace settled over the hangar. As the last spirit vanished, the symbols dimmed, their purpose fulfilled. I collapsed to the ground, exhausted but relieved, knowing that I had played a part in freeing the lost souls of Flight 191. The hangar seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, the darkness retreating into the shadows from whence it came. Driving away from LAX that night, the city lights twinkling in the distance, I felt a profound sense of closure. The tragedy of Flight 191 had been more than a mechanical failure. It was a collision of the natural and the supernatural, a reminder that some mysteries transcend our understanding. Back at my office, I pinned down the harrowing tale, ensuring that the story of Flight 191 and the spirits that haunted its legacy would not be forgotten. The experience had changed me, deepening my understanding of the unseen forces that shape our world and the thin line that separates reality from the unknown. As I submitted the article to my editor, I glanced out the window, the night sky stretching endlessly above. I couldn't help but wonder what other secrets lay hidden in the shadows, waiting for those brave enough to seek the truth. And as the stars twinkled silently, I knew that the echoes of Flight 191 would forever resonate in the annals of aviation history, a testament to the enduring mystery that lies just beyond the horizon. Story number 5. Echoes at O'Hare. I've always believed that airports are gateways not just to distant lands, but to the unknown corners of our fears and curiosities. Denver International Airport, DIA, is where my story begins, but Chicago's O'Hare was the stage for the nightmare that unfolded in 2020. It was a year already fraught with uncertainty, but nothing could have prepared me for the haunting presence of the Mothman that began to shadow my every step. As a seasoned airline operations manager, I prided myself on my ability to stay calm under pressure. DIA was a sprawling hub of activity, its endless terminals a testament to human ambition and the relentless march of progress. Yet, beneath the surface of this bustling airport, whispers of a legendary creature began to circulate among the staff, stories that were dismissed by most as mere folklore or the product of overworked minds. It started with small things, flickering lights in the baggage claim area, unexplained power surges, and the eerie feeling of being watched in the dead of night. At first, I attributed these anomalies to the aging infrastructure and the high-stress environment. But then, employees began reporting sightings of a creature, large wings silhouetted against the night sky, glowing red eyes piercing through the darkness, and a humanoid form that seemed almost too real to dismiss. One evening, as I was overseeing the night shift operations, I heard the unmistakable sound of heavy wings flapping outside the control tower. Curiosity piqued, I stepped out into the chill night air, the vast expanse of O'Hare stretching out before me under a canopy of stars. The runway lights cast long, distorted shadows across the tarmac, and the distant hum of planes provided a constant backdrop to the unsettling silence. That's when I saw it, a towering figure perched atop one of the auxiliary runways. Its wings were enormous, spanning the length of 2 commercial jets, and its eyes glowed a menacing red that seemed to burn right through me. The creature stood motionless, an ominous sentinel against the night sky. My breath caught in my throat as I struggled to comprehend what I was witnessing. Mothman, an urban legend that had haunted my childhood, was standing before me in the flesh. I blinked, hoping it was a trick of the light or a hallucination brought on by fatigue, but it remained unyielding and unnerving. The air around me seemed to thrum with a dark energy, and a palpable sense of dread settled over me. My rational mind battled with the primal fear coursing through my veins. I reached for my phone to call security, but before I could dial, the creature let out a low, resonant cry that echoed across the tarmac. Panic surged through me as I stumbled back, tripping over my own feet. The Mothman spread its wings, the feathers shimmering unnaturally under the airport lights, and took flight with a grace that belied its monstrous appearance. It soared into the night sky, leaving behind a trail of darkness that seemed to consume the very light around it. The incident left me shaken, but skepticism urged me to dismiss it as a bizarre optical illusion or a prank. However, the creature's appearances became more frequent and more disturbing. Each sighting coincided with a spike in aviation mishaps, minor collisions on the runway, unexplained delays, and even the sudden disappearance of aircraft without a trace. The staff at O'Hare grew increasingly agitated, their fear morphing into outright hysteria as the legend of Mothman took root within the airport's corridors. One night, as I was conducting a routine inspection of the maintenance tunnels beneath the terminal, I heard the familiar sound of heavy wings approaching. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned to see the Mothman descending into the darkness, its eyes burning with an unholy light. I froze, unable to move as the creature approached, its presence filling the narrow tunnel with an oppressive weight. "Why are you doing this?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible over the creature's haunting cries. The Mothman paused, its gaze locking onto mine with an intensity that pierced my very soul. In that moment, memories of Amelia Earhart's mysterious disappearance flooded my mind, how the spirit of aviation seemed forever intertwined with the unknown. The creature seemed to understand, its form flickering like a bad signal on an old radio. Without warning, the tunnel began to collapse around me, debris falling from the ceiling as the Mothman let out a final, anguished cry. I scrambled to my feet, dodging falling beams and rubble, my only thought to escape the collapsing nightmare. As I ran, the whispers of lost souls seemed to echo through the tunnels, their voices merging with the Mothman's mournful cries. Emerging into the main terminal, I found myself surrounded by chaos. The airport was in turmoil, lights flickered violently, alarms blared without reason, and the ground trembled beneath my feet. The Mothman hovered above, its presence a harbinger of impending disaster. I knew that the creature was not just a beast of legend, but a sentinel of doom, warning us of the darkness that lay just beyond our understanding. Desperate to avert catastrophe, I reached out to the airport's emergency response team, urging them to investigate the creature's intentions. Together, we pieced together the correlation between the Mothman sightings and the aviation accidents, realizing that the creature was a manifestation of the collective fears and unresolved tragedies that haunted the skies above. As dawn broke over Chicago, the airport began to calm, the immediate threat seemingly abated. The Mothman had vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared, leaving behind a trail of questions and a lingering sense of unease. The incident at O'Hare became a pivotal moment in aviation history, a chilling reminder of the thin veil between our world and the supernatural. In the weeks that followed, I delved deeper into the legends of Mothman, uncovering tales of other sightings and unexplained phenomena that spanned decades. It became clear that the creature was more than just a symbol of impending disaster. It was a guardian of sorts, a being tied to the very essence of flight and the boundless expanse of the sky. Reflecting on the events at O'Hare, I realized that some mysteries are beyond our comprehension, the truths hidden in the shadows that dance just beyond the reach of our understanding. The Mothman at O'Hare was a reminder that even in the age of technology and progress, the unknown still holds sway over our destinies, whispering warnings in the darkest of nights. As I continue my work, documenting the unexplained and the eerie, the memory of that night at O'Hare remains etched in my mind, a testament to the enduring power of legends and the shadows that linger in the places we least expect. The Mothman may have vanished, but its presence continues to haunt the halls of O'Hare, a silent guardian watching over the skies, ever vigilant against the darkness that threatens to consume us all. Story number 6. Vanishing Horizons. I've always been captivated by the mysteries that hover on the edges of history, those unsolved puzzles that whisper secrets through the corridors of time. Amelia Earhart's disappearance in 1937 was one such enigma. As a young aviation enthusiast growing up in Miami, Florida, her daring flights and untimely vanishing ignited a fire within me. But it wasn't until I delved deeper into the accounts from that fateful day that I began to understand the dark undercurrents that might have led to her disappearance. It was a humid August evening in 1937 when Amelia arrived in Miami to prepare for her ambitious around-the-world flight. The city was abuzz with excitement, the air thick with anticipation and the salty scent of the Atlantic. I was stationed at the local aviation club, eager to interview her for a feature I was writing about her upcoming journey. Amelia was gracious, her presence as commanding and graceful as ever, but there was something unsettling beneath her poised exterior. A few days before her departure, strange occurrences began to ripple through the aviation community. Mechanics reported inexplicable malfunctions, and pilots spoke of eerie apparitions near the airfield. Amelia dismissed these tales with a confident laugh, attributing them to nerves and the superstitions of those around her. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to these stories, something sinister lurking in the shadows. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, twisted shadows across the runway, Amelia confided in me. Her usually steady voice trembled as she recounted the warning she had received. "I've been approached by strangers," she said, her eyes distant. "They speak of forces beyond our understanding, of skies that swallow ships and pilots who never return. They warned me to abandon my flight." I listened, intrigued and unnerved. Amelia had always been a beacon of courage, unafraid to challenge the limits of human achievement. Yet, her confession hinted at fears that even she couldn't quell. "Do you believe them?" I asked softly, sensing the weight of her words. She sighed, her gaze fixed on the distant twinkling lights of the city. "I want to ignore them, to prove that I can conquer the skies. But there's a part of me that wonders if there's truth to their warnings." The night before her departure, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with questions, the images of apparitions and malfunctioning planes haunting my thoughts. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to investigate the reported phenomena. Armed with a flashlight and my notebook, I made my way to the old hangar where Amelia's plane, the Electra, was housed. The hangar was a relic of a bygone era, its wooden beams creaking under the weight of years of neglect. As I stepped inside, the temperature seemed to drop, the air thick with an oppressive silence. The Electra stood majestically, its silver fuselage gleaming under the weak light. I approached the aircraft, my flashlight beam dancing over the polished surfaces and intricate machinery. Suddenly, a chill swept through the hangar, and the lights flickered ominously. I froze, heart pounding, as a shadow darted across the wall. "Hello?" I called out, voice barely above a whisper. The response was a low, guttural growl that echoed through the vast space. Panic surged through me as I backed away, but my curiosity held me captive. I noticed strange symbols etched into the floor near the plane, cryptic markings that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. My hand trembled as I traced the lines, feeling a surge of cold energy that sent shivers down my spine. Without warning, the ground beneath me began to tremble, and the hangar doors slammed shut with a deafening bang. Darkness enveloped me, the only light coming from the eerie glow of the symbols beneath my feet. I tried to scream, but my voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence. Shadows twisted and writhed around me, forming grotesque shapes that seemed to reach out with malicious intent. Desperate to escape, I stumbled toward the exit, but the hangar transformed before my eyes. The once familiar space now resembled a labyrinth of shifting walls and endless corridors, each turn leading me deeper into the heart of darkness. The air grew thick with whispers, voices from beyond echoing my fears and doubts. Images of Amelia's plane vanishing into the abyss flashed before my eyes, the memory of her disappearance intertwining with the nightmare unfolding around me. Time lost all meaning as I navigated the twisted maze, each step a battle against the forces that sought to trap me. The symbols on the floor glowed brighter, their power intensifying, feeding the darkness that surrounded me. I could feel Amelia's presence, her spirit intertwined with the malevolent energy that haunted the hangar. Her voice, a mere whisper in my mind, urged me to find the truth, to uncover the secrets that bound her to this forsaken place. Finally, I reached a chamber where the air was thick with the scent of decay and despair. In the center stood a pedestal, atop which lay an ancient tome bound in dark leather. The symbols from the hangar adorned its cover, pulsating with a sinister light. Amelia's spirit materialized before me, her eyes filled with sorrow and determination. "You must stop it," she implored, her voice echoing with a haunting resonance. "The forces that took me are still here, feeding on our fears and dragging us into oblivion. Only by confronting the darkness can we break free." Summoning every ounce of courage, I approached the pedestal, the tome beckoning me with its dark allure. As I reached out to touch it, a surge of energy coursed through me, the symbols on the cover burning into my skin. Visions of Amelia's final moments flooded my mind, her plane caught in a vortex of shadows, the screams of unseen entities tearing through the night. With a final, desperate push, I tore the tome from the pedestal, the darkness recoiling as if struck by an invisible force. The symbols on the floor shattered, the oppressive energy dissipating into the night. Amelia's spirit smiled, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered before fading into the light, leaving me alone in the now peaceful chamber. The hangar doors creaked open, allowing the first rays of dawn to pierce the darkness. Exhausted but victorious, I stumbled out into the morning light, the nightmare of the previous night fading into memory. Amelia's disappearance had been more than a tragic accident. It was a battle against forces beyond our comprehension, a struggle for freedom from the shadows that sought to consume us. Back in my motel room, I reviewed my notes and the fragments of my experience, determined to share the truth behind Amelia Earhart's vanishing. My article became a testament to her courage and the unseen battles fought in the skies and shadows. But even as I published my findings, the memory of that night lingered, a reminder that some mysteries are cloaked in darkness, waiting for those brave enough to seek the light. Amelia's legacy lived on, not just as a pioneer of aviation, but as a beacon of resilience against the unknown. And as I looked up at the clear Miami sky, I couldn't help but feel that somewhere above, her spirit soared, forever intertwined with the secrets that once threatened to swallow her whole. Story number 7. Shadows Beneath Denver. I've always been fascinated by airports, not just as gateways to distant lands, but as microcosms of human ambition, technology, and sometimes, darker undercurrents that lie hidden beneath the bustling terminals. Denver International Airport, DIA, was no exception. Its vast expanse, intricate artwork, and labyrinthine tunnels made it a subject of intrigue for conspiracy theorists and curious minds alike. But what truly captured my attention was Lucifer, a colossal blue horse statue that loomed ominously near the entrance, its glowing red eyes seemingly watching every passerby. The tragic story behind its creation, where a part of the statue had killed its artist, added an unsettling layer to its presence. My fascination with DIA wasn't purely academic. As a freelance journalist with a penchant for uncovering the hidden and the mysterious, I saw DIA as the perfect setting for my next deep dive article. The airport's rumored underground bunkers, alleged to be the headquarters of secret societies or shelters for the apocalypse, provided ample material for exploration. Armed with my camera, recorder, and a healthy dose of skepticism, I decided to spend a weekend at DIA, documenting its secrets and unraveling the myths that surrounded it. The drive from my home in Denver to DIA was uneventful, the cityscape gradually giving way to the sprawling expanse of the airport. As I approached, Lucifer's imposing figure greeted me, its metallic body reflecting the setting sun in an almost sinister manner. The statue's eyes seemed to follow my every move, a silent sentinel guarding the mysteries below. Upon arriving, I checked into a nearby motel, knowing that DIA's endless terminals and late-night flights would require me to stay close. The next morning, I woke up early, eager to begin my investigation. The airport was already buzzing with activity, travelers hurrying to their gates, airport staff moving with purpose, and the constant hum of announcements overhead. But beneath the surface, I sensed an undercurrent of something more. I started my day by exploring the public areas, capturing photos of the unique artwork and murals that adorned the walls. One mural, in particular, caught my eye, a sprawling depiction of apocalyptic scenes, with dark skies, crumbling buildings, and shadowy figures lurking in the background. The symbolism was heavy, almost foreboding, and I couldn't help but feel a chill run down my spine as I stared at it. Determined to dig deeper, I approached one of the airport's information desks, hoping to glean more about the underground tunnels rumored to lie beneath DIA. The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with a professional demeanor, glanced at me over her glasses. "Can I help you with something?" she asked politely. "I'm researching the history and hidden aspects of DIA," I replied, keeping my tone casual. "I've heard there are extensive underground tunnels and possibly some restricted areas. Do you have any information on that?" Her expression shifted slightly, a flicker of hesitation crossing her face. "Most of the underground areas are restricted for security reasons. There are maintenance tunnels and baggage handling systems, but anything beyond that isn't accessible to the public." I nodded, sensing that she wasn't going to divulge much more. Undeterred, I decided to focus on what was available. As the day progressed, I interviewed several airport staff members, each one offering tidbits of information that added layers to the airport's enigmatic reputation. Stories of late-night security patrols encountering strange noises, glimpses of shadowy figures in the tunnel lights, and unexplained power outages were common threads that wove through their accounts. In the late afternoon, I made my way back to Lucifer, capturing more detailed photographs of the statue. Its presence was undeniably eerie, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than just a piece of art. According to local lore, Lucifer was built atop an ancient burial ground, its creation cursed by the restless spirits that lingered beneath. The incident that killed its creator only fueled these superstitions, turning the statue into a symbol of tragedy and mystery. As evening descended, I decided to explore the airport's main terminal one last time before retreating to my motel. The terminal was a hive of activity, yet there was an underlying tension, as if the building itself was holding its breath. The lighting was dimmer in certain sections, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. I felt eyes on me, though I was certain I was alone. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the terminal into brief darkness before stabilizing. The murmur of the crowd grew uneasy, and I noticed a group of travelers huddled near one of the entrances, whispering nervously. One man, clearly agitated, muttered something about the tunnels and the noises that echoed through the night. I approached him, introducing myself as a journalist interested in the airport's mysteries. He eyed me warily before responding. "You don't belong here," he said in a low voice. "They're restless. The things down there, they don't want us digging." Before I could press further, the man shook his head and walked away, leaving me with a sense of foreboding. The night was growing darker, and the airport's corridors seemed to stretch endlessly, the usual bustle now replaced by an eerie silence. Deciding to call it a day, I returned to my motel, my mind racing with the day's findings. As I sat at my desk, reviewing the photos and notes, a knock sounded at my door. Startled, I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole to see a security guard standing outside. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said, his voice strained. "We've had some unusual activity at the airport. Is everything all right?" I nodded, though unease gnawed at me. "Just doing some research." "Is there a problem?" He hesitated before answering. "We've had reports of strange noises and sightings near Lucifer and the tunnels. It's probably nothing, but we're keeping an eye out. Just be careful." He left, and I locked the door, the warning echoing in my mind. Sleep was elusive that night, my thoughts consumed by the airport's dark underbelly and the secrets it guarded so fiercely. The following morning, I decided to take a closer look at Lucifer, armed with my camera and a flashlight. The statue stood tall, its presence even more imposing in the daylight. As I circled it, I noticed something unusual, a faint, almost imperceptible movement in the shadows near its base. My heart raced as I focused my flashlight on the area, revealing a hidden entrance partially obscured by overgrown vines and debris. Curiosity overcame caution, and I approached the entrance, clearing away the obstacles to reveal a narrow stairway leading downward. The air grew colder as I descended, the light from above fading into darkness. My flashlight beamed cut through the gloom, revealing a network of tunnels that sprawled beneath the airport. The walls were damp, the scent of earth and mildew filling my nostrils. I ventured deeper into the tunnels, the sound of my footsteps echoing ominously. The further I went, the more I felt the weight of the airport's hidden history pressing down on me. Ancient symbols were etched into the stone walls, similar to those I had seen in the apocalyptic murals above. The air was thick with a sense of dread, as if the tunnels themselves were alive with malevolent energy. As I navigated the winding passages, I stumbled upon a large chamber illuminated by flickering lights. In the center stood a circle of candles arranged in a complex pattern, the flames dancing with an unnatural vigor. Surrounding the circle were symbols that matched those in Lucifer and the murals, their meaning lost to time but exuding an aura of dark magic. I set up my camera and recorder, documenting the chamber's eerie beauty. As I began to take notes, a low chant filled the air, the voices indistinct yet unmistakably human. The temperature dropped sharply, my breath visible in the frigid air. Shadows seemed to move of their own accord, twisting and contorting in the corners of the chamber. A sudden flash of light erupted from the center of the candle circle, and a figure materialized before me, a tall, imposing man dressed in robes adorned with the same symbols as the walls. His eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and his presence exuded authority and menace. "You should not have come here," he intoned, his voice resonating through the chamber. "This place is not meant for the living." I stumbled backward, trying to steady myself. "I mean no harm. I'm just trying to understand the stories and the history." The man's expression remained stern. "Understanding requires respect and permission. The secrets you seek are bound by ancient pacts and curses. To uncover them is to invite chaos and destruction." Before I could respond, the chamber began to shake, the candles flickering wildly as the symbols on the walls glowed brighter. The air filled with a cacophony of whispers and chants, the voices merging into a deafening roar. The figure raised his hands, and a wave of dark energy swept through the room, knocking me to the ground. Pain shot through my body as I struggled to rise, the oppressive force pressing down on me from all sides. The man's figure began to distort, shifting into a monstrous form with twisted limbs and glowing eyes. The chants grew louder, the symbols now pulsating with dark power. Desperate to escape, I crawled toward the exit, the dark energy tearing at my flesh and mind. The tunnels seemed to stretch endlessly, the path back obscured by shadows and fear. My camera slipped from my hands, the footage capturing nothing but static as I was engulfed by the darkness. In the final moments before everything went black, I heard the man's voice, now filled with anger and despair. "You have crossed the boundary. The gateway is open. The darkness will consume." When I awoke, I was lying in my motel room, my body bruised and battered. My camera and recorder were missing, as if they had been swallowed by the shadows themselves. The sun was high in the sky, dispelling the night's terrors, but the memories of that chamber and the dark figure haunted me. Determined to make sense of what had happened, I returned to DIA the next day, seeking answers from anyone who might know about the underground tunnels and the rituals performed there. Most dismissed my questions, attributing them to overactive imaginations fueled by local legends. But one old janitor, his face weathered by years of service, pulled me aside with a knowing look. "You shouldn't have gone down there," he whispered, his eyes darting nervously around the bustling terminal. "There are things best left undisturbed. The tunnels, they hold secrets no one should uncover." I experienced it firsthand, I insisted, frustration evident in my voice. "I saw rituals, symbols, and heard chanting." "What is happening beneath the airport?" The janitor sighed deeply, his shoulders slumping with resignation. The tunnels were built during the Cold War, a supposed bunker for the elite in case of a catastrophe. But rumors spread about other uses, dark rituals to bind spirits, summon entities, keep certain powers hidden. Lucifer was placed to guard the entrance, but even it couldn't keep everything contained. I felt a chill despite the midday sun, the janitor's words confirming the darkest of the airport's legends. "What can be done to stop it?" He shook his head. "Nothing you can do alone. The powers at play here are ancient and malevolent. If you're still determined, be careful. The shadows don't take kindly to intruders." Thanking him, I left with a sense of dread. The truth was out there, buried beneath the airport's gleaming exterior, but accessing it came with a price. The day's work had taken a dark turn, and I knew I had to tread carefully. As days turned into weeks, the experience at DIA left an indelible mark on me. Strange occurrences plagued my daily life, unexplained noises in the night, fleeting shadows at the edge of my vision, and the persistent feeling of being watched. The image of Lucifer's glowing eyes haunted my dreams, a reminder of the thin veil between reality and the supernatural. Determined to understand and possibly put an end to the dark forces at DIA, I decided to return one last time, this time with a team of trusted friends and experts in paranormal investigation. Armed with advanced equipment and a cautious optimism, we prepared to delve deeper into the airport's mysteries. The night of our return was thick with tension. The airport was eerily quiet, the usual hustle subdued as if the building itself was holding its breath. We made our way to Lucifer, the statue's presence even more intimidating in the dim light. As we approached, the air grew colder, and an unsettling silence enveloped us. Using the map I had sketched from the janitor's directions, we found the hidden entrance to the tunnels. The stairway was narrow and claustrophobic, the walls closing in as we descended. Our flashlights pierced the darkness, revealing the same ancient symbols and ritualistic markings that I had seen before. We ventured deeper, the tunnels becoming more labyrinthine and disorienting. The oppressive energy was palpable, each step heavy with unseen forces. The further we went, the more the air seemed to thicken, our breaths coming in shallow gasps. Suddenly, we entered a vast chamber illuminated by an unnatural light source emanating from the ceiling. In the center stood an altar, similar to the one I had encountered, surrounded by candles and dark symbols. The atmosphere was charged with dark magic, the very air humming with energy. As we began to document the chamber, the candles flared to life, and the temperature plummeted. The walls echoed with chanting, the voices of unseen entities growing louder. The room began to shake, debris falling from the ceiling as we struggled to maintain our footing. From the shadows emerged the figure of the man I had seen before, now fully transformed into a monstrous entity, his features twisted in agony. The chanting intensified, the symbols on the walls glowing with a malevolent light. "You should not have returned," he bellowed, his voice a cacophony of screams and whispers. "The gateway is open. The darkness will spread." Panic surged through me as I realized the gravity of our situation. The rituals we had uncovered were not just for show, they were attempts to control or contain the dark forces that DIA harbored. Our presence had disrupted the delicate balance, threatening to unleash chaos upon the world above. Desperate to stop the impending doom, I remembered the dagger I had found, perhaps it held the key to sealing the gateway. My team hesitated, fear etched on their faces, but I knew what had to be done. Grabbing the dagger, I approached the altar, the monstrous entity blocking my path. "Please," I pleaded, my voice steady despite the terror gripping me. "Help us understand." How do we stop this? The entity's eyes glowed with a fiery intensity, the weight of centuries-old sorrow and anger evident in his gaze. The ritual must be completed. Only then can the gateway be sealed and the darkness contained. Understanding dawned on me, this was no mere act of summoning but a desperate bid to control forces beyond comprehension. To stop the curse, we had to participate in the ritual, risking our lives to save countless others. With my team at my side, we followed the instructions etched into the altar, the dagger serving as a focal point for the dark energy. The chanting grew louder, the symbols pulsating with power as we moved in unison, performing the ritual to bind the gateway. As we completed the final incantation, a surge of energy exploded through the chamber, the dark forces pushing back against our efforts. The entity let out a final, anguished scream as the gateway began to close, the darkness being sucked back into the depths from which it had emerged. The chamber stabilized, the oppressive energy dissipating as the gateway sealed shut. The monstrous entity faded into the shadows, his presence lingering as a silent guardian once more. Exhausted but victorious, we made our way back to the surface, the first light of dawn breaking over DIA's gleaming facade. Driving away from the airport, the sun rising behind us, I felt a profound sense of relief and accomplishment. We had faced the darkness beneath DIA and emerged triumphant, our actions ensuring that the secrets and curses of Denver International Airport remained contained. Back at my home, the memories of that night were vivid and haunting, a testament to the thin line between the mundane and the supernatural. My article on DIA's hidden horrors garnered attention, shedding light on the dark underbelly of one of America's busiest airports. Yet, despite the recognition, a lingering unease remained, a reminder that some gateways should never be opened. Lucifer stood once more as a silent sentinel, its eyes reflecting the dawn of a new day. I couldn't help but feel that the statue watched over us, a guardian against the darkness that sought to spill into the world above. The tunnels beneath DIA remained sealed, their secrets hidden from prying eyes, but the knowledge of their existence weighed heavily on me. In the end, my journey to uncover the mysteries of DIA taught me that some places hold power beyond understanding, their shadows stretching far into the lives of those who dare to uncover their secrets. Denver International Airport, with its eerie statues and hidden tunnels, remained a place of fascination and fear, a modern-day crossroads where the ordinary met the extraordinary. As I continued my work, sharing stories of haunted places and forgotten histories, the experience at DIA stayed with me, a reminder of the darkness that lies just beneath the surface of our everyday lives. And while the world above bustled with activity, the shadows beneath DIA remained, a testament to the enduring mysteries that continue to captivate and terrify those who seek the truth.